afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our third brown bag session today. Today, we proudly present you Miss Anneliese Fuchs. She's an Austrian landscape planner working at ECO, Institute for Ecology at Klagenfurt. Ms. Fuchs will give us today a detailed insight on how gamifying the management of the Japanese knotweed will work. So Anneliese, I would pass the word on to you, and please explain us on how to play a game of clones.
Thank you, Monica, and hello, colleagues, and good noon to all of you. For this brown bag session, we're going to dive into the world of the infamous Japanese knotweed, Fallopia japonica, and into the question of how to play the game of clones. My name is Anneliese Fuchs, and for some 3 years, I focused in a sparkling science project on researching and finding ways to communicate the challenges that come with the spreading of Japanese knotweed. The goal of the project was to gain all information possible in that time about the plant, be it via literature research, DNA barcoding, or several field experiments, in order to initially it was planned to create only a computer simulation, but as it is with projects and plans, we also created a board and web game that is called Game of Clones. And in the following presentation, I want you to explain how the way to the development of the game was and what challenges and what learnings we had along the way and after the development of the game. Already in the first initial literature research, some interesting insights came already up. I'm not going to tell you everything, because I could talk about the plant for days. But the most interesting things were, first thing, we not only have to deal with one invasive knotweed species in Austria, but with 3. So it's the Japanese knotweed, which is the one that people usually mean when they talk about knotweed. It's from China and Korea and Japan. And then we have the giant knotweed from Russia, which is bigger and a bit hairier, the leaves. You can see the two on the pictures. And then we have the hybrid out of these two, which is in Austria the most common and the most spread one. But there is a lot of confusions and people mix it up also in articles. So it's important to discriminate these 3. And the second interesting thing that we found out is Japanese knotweed came to Europe and America 200 years ago. And the interesting thing is that the knotweed is dioecious. That means that the fertile male and the fertile female plants parts are on different individuals, and only a female plant made its way to Europe and never a fertile male one. So that means all the Japanese knotweed the pure one that you can find in Europe are one and the same clone. But of course, it can crossbreed with the Russian knotweed. So the hybrid and the giant knotweed, they can spread via seeds, but the Japanese knotweed cannot. It can only spread via rhizomes. And this is also the one of the things why it's so invasive and problematic, because it spreads via rhizomes, and it only needs 0.5 centimeter of rhizome to regenerate itself again. There are lots of impacts of this species. I just want to mention the most important ones. It requires, or it takes up the space that could be for native plants, and a big one is also the economical damage. It can grow into cracks of buildings and roads and walls, and then burst the wall with its growth. And it's also a problem in agricultural fields, because it takes up the space that are for crops, and farmers have to deal with it all the time. And it costs a lot of money to control it. In Great Britain, even when you want to sell a house, it's even like that you have to state if there is Japanese knotweed on your property or not. And then there you also have online calculators to calculate how much less worth your property is when there is knotweed on it, and you have to get rid of it, and you're liable for 10 years. If it comes in these 10 years, you have to pay afterwards. So it's a really big thing there already. So people get very creative on how to get control over the spreading of the plant, and it's from the physical removement, like pulling out when there's only smaller patches. This is the most efficient one. When there's bigger ones, it's quite hard to get rid of it. Some creative methods, one that we have been working on as well, are the grazing with sheep and goats. And another thing, people always ask why it's not invasive in their natural habitat, and in this case, it's because of the Japanese knotweed psyllid, which is a species of flea, and it sucks out the plant juice. And there are already some experiments in Great Britain to release this flea to get control over the plant, but this is a very controversial topic. So then we did the DNA barcoding. We sampled 95 leaves and sent it to the Center for DNA Barcoding in Canada. DNA barcoding is a method of species identification using a short section of DNA and comparing it with other DNA sections of other individuals. So every individual has its own barcode, and then you can compare it with other barcodes of other individuals and compare it how similar it is. We took 2 DNA sections, one to check who's the mother plant, and the other section to realize if it's a hybrid or not. And so we wanted to get information on the hybridization and distribution in Austria, in Carinthia and Styria, our study area. And for us, this was kind of an experiment because we never did DNA barcoding before. So we just wanted to know what the method can do for us also in the future. And we had 2 big learnings. First one, you really need good reference samples. So if you want to know if you have Japanese or giant knotweed in front of you, you have to have one example that is for sure one or the other species. And this is only possible if you get one from an area where only the one species is present. So we had to get a giant knotweed from Russia where there is no Japanese knotweed, and a Japanese knotweed from Japan where there is no giant knotweed. And this was a little bit hard to get. And the second one is you really have to know what question you want to answer, because that depends on what DNA section you take. Because, for example, we wanted to know information about the genetic variability within the samples, to know if the Japanese knotweed in Europe or Austria is really just one clone, but it was not possible with our 2 DNA sections. But we got to know that only 3 samples clearly were Falloppia japonica, and all the other ones were most likely the hybrid Falloppia bohemica. And none of them were the giant one. Even the ones from botanical gardens or museums could not be recognized as pure giant knotweed. And a third thing that we learned is that the phenotype and the genotype are very different. So when you see in the field a Japanese knotweed, because it looks completely like this one, it doesn't mean it is not a hybrid, because the hybrid can look like the one parent or the other, and you cannot tell the difference in the field. So it's not possible to tell the species from the field. We also did a few experiments in the field. We monitored the plant for 4 months. We did experiments with rhizo boxes to study the undergrowth growth, and we did an excavation of the rhizome to see how it deals with underneath obstacles. And the two most important learnings were that the knotweed grows above ground 20 centimeters per week in average until mid-July, and then it kind of stops. And from the excavation, we did dig up a stock of that was 4-year-old, and we could follow the rhizomes up until 2 meters, and then it only stopped because there was already the groundwater. So yeah, there happens a lot beneath. Yeah, and then we had all this information, and on a train ride, two people from our team came up with the idea of a board game in order to have a fun way to give this information to the people, because the most important thing is the prevention of spreading the plant, and this needs a lot of awareness raising. So the four of us here sat together once a week to work on the rules of the game. And here's the different stages of the game. It got more and more professional, and we tested it many times with children to work on the games, the rules. So here you see the game. It's a cooperative strategy game. That means that all of the players play together and have the same goal, and that is to eradicate the Japanese knotweed from the area. And Japanese knotweed has the other goal, and that is to invade a protected area, and we want to avoid that. And the game is structured like it's a grid out of hexagons, and each cell has special properties. For example, this is grassland, or this is non-fruitful land, or this is sealed soil. So it's more or less attractive to Japanese knotweed to grow. And there are several. The green ones are event cards with different climate events for the knotweed, and after that they grow less or more. And then we have the blue action cards, where you can use actual measures to control the weed, like digging up, or using herbicide, or using sheep. And it was it creates kind of realistic scenarios. So when there's only small patches of the plant, it's very easy to just pull it out or mow it and then it's gone. But when there's bigger patches, it gets rather difficult to get rid of then, and maybe you have to use herbicide. We even have the flea species as one method. So there are a lot of realistic scenarios that you can play with. And we had a few learnings as well while gamifying this topic. So the one big one was we could reach an entire new target group. The children and even the adults had a lot of fun playing this game, and they really got involved into the topic, and it was their own mission to clear the protected area and protect it. And another thing was this playing with scenarios. We also used it for strategy workshops, where we laid behind a satellite photo of a real area that is affected, and we looked where's the knotweed now and how we eradicate it, and so we could play in a safe environment with different scenarios. It was super interesting to work with different scientists. So there were the game scientists that were looking after the algorithm, and they checked if it's fun to play and if the balance between chance to win and chance to lose are the same. And then there were the ecologists that looked at everything is realistic. So we had this participative development of rules and had to balance between the playability and realistic simulation. And it was a lot of playing and changing the rules. There were good learnings in it. And then another thing we had to face was that it's not that easy to market such a learning educational game, because it's always going to be a niche product, and it's not for mainstream, and not every board game company can make use of it. But it's really a fun idea for schools to learn a specific topic. And as always, many people work in this project, like we had our students and we had the different scientists, and everyone put their ideas into the game, it's always the question of who owns the rights for this game, because so many people worked on it. So we also had to face this question. Yeah, but it was a nice journey with a really nice product. We now have it like in a professional package and can play it. And I'm happy that I could take you a little bit on our journey to this game. Thank you very much.
Dear Anneliese, thank you very much for this insight on this topic. So we really gained more information on, let's say, the biological part and also the part of gamifying with this topic. Thank you very much.
Will ensure nature conservation in the 21st century. Be part of the new 4-semester part-time master program. Carinthia University of Applied Sciences.